The Solomon Islands, a scattered paradise in the South Pacific, have long lured adventurers and fortune seekers. Among them was Mr. Bell, a trader who arrived in the late 19th century. Little is known of his early life, but like many of his era, he was drawn by the promise of riches. The islands, with their lush forests and bountiful seas, offered a wealth of resources. Mr. Bell, it seemed, was determined to carve his own piece of fortune in this tropical frontier. He established a trading post, a hub for exchanging goods with the local islanders. The islands were rich in copra, the dried flesh of coconuts, highly prized for its oil used in products from soap to margarine. Mr. Bell saw an opportunity to capitalize on this valuable commodity. He envisioned ships laden with copra sailing for distant ports, bringing him substantial profits. However, the pursuit of wealth often comes at a cost, and in the case of Mr. Bell, the price would be steep. Mr. Bell's arrival did not go unnoticed by the indigenous people of the Solomon Islands. They observed his activities, his relentless pursuit of copra, and the growing influence he sought over their land. While trade had existed in the islands for centuries, Mr. Bell's approach differed. He was driven by a desire for profit, for accumulation, which contrasted sharply with the islanders' own customs and beliefs. He introduced new systems of trade, new forms of currency, and new expectations for labor. The islanders, accustomed to a more reciprocal and sustainable way of life, began to view Mr. Bell's practices with suspicion. They saw their traditional ways being disrupted, their resources exploited, and their authority challenged. Whispers of discontent began to circulate, carried on the tropical breeze, hints of the growing resentment towards Mr. Bell and his methods. Local chieftain, we see our ways being disrupted, our resources taken without respect. This cannot continue. Mr. William Bell, these are just the growing pains of progress. You'll see it will benefit us all in the end. As Mr. Bell's trading operation expanded, so too did the unease among the islanders. Their whispers of discontent grew louder, their warnings more direct. Yet, blinded by his ambition, Mr. Bell seemed oblivious to the rising tide of anger. He dismissed the concerns of the islanders, viewing them as obstacles to his grand plans, rather than as legitimate grievances. Local chieftain, we have tried to reason with you, but you do not listen. Our people are growing restless. Mr. William Bell, your people need to adapt. This is the way of the future, and I will not be swayed by old customs. One fateful day, a group of islanders approached Mr. Bell at his trading post. They came not to trade, but to confront him. They spoke of broken promises, of unfair deals, of disrespect for their customs. They demanded a change in his practices, a recognition of their rights. But Mr. Bell, accustomed to dictating the terms of engagement, refused to listen. He dismissed their concerns, waving away their demands. This fateful encounter, this clash of cultures and ambitions, would have tragic consequences. The islanders, their pleas ignored, their warnings dismissed, felt a profound sense of injustice. They had tried to reason with Mr. Bell, to find a peaceful resolution, but their efforts had been in vain. In their eyes, he had brought this fate upon himself. He had failed to respect their customs, to understand their perspective, and had left them with no other recourse. Word spread quickly through the island grapevine, a call to action whispered from village to village. The decision was made to confront Mr. Bell once more, this time with force. Indigenous warrior, we have no choice. He must be stopped. They ambushed him on the beach as he returned from a trading expedition. The attack was swift and brutal, a chaotic eruption of anger and frustration. Mr. Bell, caught off guard, overwhelmed by the ferocity of the assault, never stood a chance. Section 5. Retribution from the CHMS Royalist, Unleashed. News of Mr. Bell's death reached the ears of the British Empire, which had been steadily expanding its influence in the Pacific. The killing of a British subject, particularly a trader who represented the Empire's commercial interests, was not a matter to be taken lightly. The Royal Navy, the iron fist of the Empire, was dispatched to deliver a swift and decisive response.
HMS Royalist, a formidable warship armed with cannons and carrying a contingent of Royal Marines, arrived in the Solomon Islands with a clear mission: to punish those responsible for Mr. Bell's death and to reassert British authority.
The islanders, accustomed to their relative isolation, now faced the full might of a global power. Their actions, born out of desperation and a sense of injustice, had brought upon them a reckoning they were ill-prepared to face. Section 6. Villages in flames, the price of defiance. HMS Royalist, under the command of officers eager to avenge Mr. Bell's death and demonstrate British power, wasted no time in exacting retribution. The warship sailed along the coasts of the islands, its cannons thundering, raining fire upon villages suspected of involvement in the killing.
The islanders, armed with spears and clubs, were no match for the technological superiority of the British.
Villages were reduced to smouldering ruins, their inhabitants scattered, their lives upended. The Royal Marines, dispatched ashore, conducted raids and punitive expeditions, seizing property and taking prisoners. The islands, once a paradise of natural beauty, were scarred by violence and destruction.
The British, determined to make an example of the islanders, sought to crush their spirit and deter any future resistance.
Section 7. Scars on the land, the legacy of violence. The punitive actions of HMS Royalist left an indelible mark on the Solomon Islands. The physical scars of the bombardment-burned villages, ravaged fields, served as a constant reminder of the devastating consequences of defying the British Empire. The psychological trauma ran even deeper, instilling fear and resentment towards the colonial power. The islanders, once proud and independent, were forced to submit to British rule. Their traditional systems of governance were undermined, their customs and beliefs dismissed as primitive. The British, emboldened by their show of force, imposed their own laws, their own economic systems, and their own vision for the islands. The Solomon Islanders, once masters of their own destiny, were now subjects of a distant empire. Section 8. Seeds of Distrust, the long shadow of colonialism. The events surrounding Mr. Bell's death and the subsequent British retaliation cast a long shadow over the Solomon Islands. The brutal response of the Royal Navy sowed the seeds of distrust and resentment towards colonial rule. The islanders, who had once viewed Europeans with a mixture of curiosity and caution, now regarded them with suspicion and fear. The British, for their part, seemed oblivious to the long-term consequences of their actions. They saw the islands primarily as a source of resources, a place to exploit for profit. The needs and aspirations of the indigenous people were of secondary importance. This fundamental disconnect, this clash of cultures and values, would continue to shape the relationship between the Solomon Islanders and their colonial rulers for generations to come. Section 9. Echoes of the Past. Remembering Mr. Bell's story. The story of Mr. Bell, while seemingly a footnote in the annals of history, serves as a cautionary tale. It highlights the dangers of cultural arrogance, of economic exploitation, and of the use of violence to assert dominance. Mr. Bell's relentless pursuit of profit, his disregard for the concerns of the islanders, ultimately led to his demise. His death, while tragic, should not overshadow the larger story of the Solomon Islands and their struggle for autonomy. It is essential to remember the victims of colonial violence, to acknowledge the injustices they suffered, and to learn from the mistakes of the past. Only then can we hope to build a more just and equitable future for all. Section 10. The Solomon Islands Today. Navigating a Complex History. The Solomon Islands today stand as a testament to their resilient people. They have endured centuries of outside influence, from European colonialism to the turmoil of World War II. Yet through it all, they have retained their unique cultural identity, their strong sense of community, and their deep connection to their land and sea. The legacy of colonialism, however, continues to shape the islands. Economic disparities, political instability, and social challenges persist. The Solomon Islands, like many post-colonial nations, must navigate a complex history as they strive to build a more prosperous and equitable future for all their citizens. The story of Mr. Bell, a distant echo from the past, serves as a reminder of the importance of understanding and respecting different cultures, of pursuing economic justice, and of resolving conflicts peacefully.